You are listening to the Sinister DreamCast Network.
So, what's the plan?
I'm gonna start shaking things up.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Don't say that. What? That? What? That?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?
Gentlemen, you have my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Hello, and welcome to the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nick Kazina.
And I am also one host, Joe Conniff.
How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you?
I'm superb.
Okay.
I didn't know if I wanted to go with stupendous or superb, so I guess I superb won out in the rock paper scissors there.
Yeah. Well, you kind of already started it, and then you kind of can't backtrack onto the T for stupendous.
No, I can't. So this week, though we know we're a little way off, we're gonna talk some Star Wars in preparation for Rogue One, because this shithole of a year has been, a shithole. So we need some medicine, and Lucasfilm is going to give us some medicine. So we're gonna ease our way in.
Yeah, we're not going to do a road to Star Wars this year, but we will do a small off the beaten path trail to Rogue One.
Yeah, exactly. Because why not? Like, I feel like everyone's excited for it. It's just not as excited as last year.
Yeah, it feels like this is. And it's kind of weird, actually. It kind of just feels like this is just another Star Wars movie. Yeah. Already, it sort of feels that way. For the casual fan, of course. I am still going to go see it.
Oh, yeah, I'm still going to go see it. I think what it comes down... I think the only reason why it's like this is because it's the first anthology. And we know that we're not going to see these characters again in their own movie. Because Kathleen Kennedy already said that... they're not going to be doing like a Rogue 2, if you will. I'm sure we'll see, Jyn Erso in other movies. She'll probably show up every once in a while. But I guess we're not going to see this group of characters together again, at least on the big screen. Yeah,
I get the feeling like there's a lack of enthusiasm. Well, not a lack of enthusiasm, but just not... The stakes aren't as high, it feels, for the fans for this movie, because... There's really not almost a single character in this movie other than probably Darth Vader that you're like, this is the character. Like, I want to see where this goes with this character. There's really not, like, we've always had that going all the way back, not including A New Hope, because people didn't know what they were in for really with Star Wars. But since then, there's always been a character on screen that you're like, I want to see what happens here with these characters. And Rogue One really doesn't have that. There's really no investment in these characters.
Though, it does up the stakes, because every single one of these characters are disposable.
Yeah, that too.
So
and they very much could be.
Yeah. So that's kind of exciting, actually, when you think about it. But one of the things that came out, Joe and I have not seen the most recent trailer. We both have agreed that we're done. We don't need any more preparation for Rogue One. We're on board. Lucasfilm has our future money already. But one of the things that has been a buzz across the internet is that in the latest Rogue One trailer, the Ghost made an appearance. And for those of you who are uninformed, which a lot of people around Joe and I's age are, because for some reason they don't find Rebels worth watching, the Ghost is the ship in Star Wars Rebels. It is the Millennium Falcon of that show, which I'm excited about that. I'm hoping it's a little bit more than just a cameo of the Ghost. I'm hoping that it means that what Joe and I spoke about on previous episodes is true. That we're going to see some Kanan and some Hera or some Ezra. I
think this was a hope and a, maybe you could call it a prediction a long time ago from us, that somehow there would be a Rebels crossover with Rogue One specifically, or just in the future in general, Rebels having some part in one of the anthology movies. But this is, and then and then it was quite a while ago that they kind of alluded to that being the case anyhow. But to what dosage?
Yeah.
Is the question. Yeah, will we get to see a Freddie Prinze Jr. Walking onto screen as Kanan? Will that be a thing, or are we going to be getting, is it just going to be a cameo of the ship to kind of like nod to us, like, yeah, this is all tied in?
Yeah.
And I really hope it's not that, because I'll be really disappointed, because, again, as Nick, you and I have said, really, what's the point of making the show canon?
Yeah.
If it's not going to be part of the cinematic universe in a significant way. If it's just going to be an Easter egg, a glamorized Easter egg, essentially, like, I don't really see the point. But the fact that it's in a trailer makes me think there's more to it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a really good chance we're going to at least see Hera. Because if you've been following the show, Hera is a major player in the rebellion at this point. She's one of the captains. She's the captain of Phoenix Squadron, which is, at the point of Rogue One, the most elite fleet in the Rebel Alliance. Really the only fleet that they have for the most part in the Rebel Alliance, just because of the lack of resources that they have. So I feel like there's a good chance we might see Hera in like in a briefing scene. She may not say anything, but it's a pretty easy character to put someone in makeup for.
Yeah, I agree. They could probably, but again, I'd still feel.
Yeah, I know.
I'd still feel like they just sort of bypassed the point of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy for Freddie Prinze Jr. because, Freddie Prinze Jr., he was a very smart actor. He realized he was aging. He realized his appeal was specifically with being a teen heartthrob. And with that, he kind of stepped away from on-screen stuff. A lot of people don't know this. He spent a lot of the early aughts being a blogger for the WWE because he's a huge wrestling fan. And that's how he paid the bills for a while, and then he transitioned into a voice actor. And if you're following Rebels, Kanan wears a mask now. Because, spoilers, he's blind. So, that's a real easy transition for him, because his face is going to be blocked most of the time.
And he's about the age that Kanan is, and he's not far off from a likeness to the character that's animated. Yeah. Nothing that some makeup and hair dye can't fix.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibilities that he could actually be playing this character. And it's not like we're talking about a guy who has zero experience in movie roles. He was a lead man at one point.
Yeah.
Not a great one.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a very poorly made movie about space fighter pilots. At one point, but but he does have it's not totally out of the realm of possibilities. So, I mean, wouldn't that be a hitting the lottery of playing your cards right as an actor?
Yeah, seriously, that you transition to a voice actor, and that voice actor, which is super rare. I could be wrong, but off the top of my head, I can't think of too many voice acting roles that turn into live action roles.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be you'd have to really think about that. I mean, you'd have to really look at things that are adapted into, live action things, and then consider who all the voice actors were. I mean, it's a very, very specific case, right?
Yeah.
Especially cartoons, because you recognize a lot of the actors in cartoons doing multiple voices for characters. It's a pretty tight-knit group there. There's not a ton of room to really just start. I mean, you can get into it, but like, there's guys that have been doing this for literally 30 years, 40 years. Like
the guy who plays Zeb, Steam Bloom. Have you ever looked at his IMDb page?
No, but I imagine it's incredible amount of
I
credits.
believe it is 650 credits.
Yeah, that voice has carried all the way back to my childhood. I can pinpoint that voice being in like the various like Disney cartoons that
Yeah.
they had, and a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Jessica Hale, I believe it is, who does Hera's voice. She's slacking a little. I believe she has about 520 credits to her name. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I think we've talked about that. I mean, I think both you and I, Joe, have a great attachment to pretty much every character on that show, with the exception of Ezra. I mean, I'm a huge canon fan. I love Sabine and I love Hera. I think they're all fantastic characters, regardless of the fact it's a cartoon.
And I've talked about this before on this podcast. If you actually look at the voice acting cast, they do all have some resemblance to most of them to their on-screen counterpart.
With the exception of Steve Blum and Zeb.
Yeah, pretty much that's it. And, well, but if you look at the kid who does the voice of Ezra, the girl who does the voice of Sabine, they're all pretty close in resemblance, and especially age, too. They really didn't pick just anyone random. I do feel like there is that aspect that they consider in their heads, like, if this gets made into a movie, how valuable would that be? Now, obviously, voice acting and on-screen acting are completely different, and I wouldn't think it would be wrong to recast all of these characters for the sake of doing a movie. I wouldn't be against it, but still, it's at least the spirit of it is kind of there.
Well, I believe, with the exception of Steve Blum, every single one of the actors are also live-action actors, too. Because the gal who does Sabine, she was in The Internship. And she does, like, her hair's much longer than Hera's. I mean, than Sabine's. But come on.
Yeah.
You can fix that with the wig. I mean, fuck. If you watch Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke's a brunette. You would fucking never know that with the wig that they give her.
Mm. Yeah, there's an interesting thing going on there, I always thought. And now that there's evidence that a big screen crossover will exist to some degree, it'll be interesting how much of a dose of that we get.
Yeah, because I think the goal is that we're going to see Rogue One, and then you'll go back on Rebels, and Rebels will show you how we got to Rogue One.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of hoping that means that Felicity Jones is going to be on Rebels.
It's very possible, yeah. I mean, I'm actually shocked they haven't worked her in yet, but I guess they don't want to reveal any information. So
yeah, I get the impression they want to give Jyn's backstory on the big screen, which is fine. That's Lucasfilm's prerogative.
But there hasn't even really been a name drop or anything like that, so.
Well, I also get the impression that Jyn was kind of not on the radar at all.
Yeah.
Until Rogue One.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like it'll be one of those stories where we kind of get her entire origin in the movie, because this might be the only movie that you see this character at all ever again. So
yeah, I mean, there's an excellent chance Jyn's gonna die. There really is.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, again, like we've said, all of these characters are pretty much expendable, and we know that the mission that they're going on is basically a suicide mission. So, how dark are they willing to go?
I know Garrett Edwards was, the reason why I was concerned about Rogue One in the first place is because Garrett Edwards said it's a war film. And I'm like, that's great, but, like, make sure you have the tone.
Yeah.
When we've talked on the podcast that the tone seems nailed. It feels like a Star Wars movie, which I was also really happy to find out, Joe, that all the anthology movies are still going to start with A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. They're not going to have the crawls. The saga films are the only ones that are going to have the crawls, but all of the anthology movies are going to start with A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Cool. It'll be weird to not have the crawl. It'll be weird.
It will be weird. It will be weird, but I'm happy that they're starting that way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like all Star Wars movies should start that way.
Yeah.
I'm cool with them keeping the crawl as a saga.
Even though it kind of is supposed to be a prelude to the crawl, it's, it's like there's the ellipsis, but it's like, I get it. It's more like this is the story. this all would have been explained in a crawl for, I mean, that's kind of what it seems like. Like, this is all the information that normally we would have just cast aside as part, like, there shouldn't be any more in the crawl for the crawl.
Yeah. Well, I also find that you mentioning the ellipsis is kind of exciting for a filmmaker if you think about it, because now they get to do their version of the ellipsis, if you will. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like I said, I'm starting to get jazzed, like, talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm excited to go see some Star Wars, even if there's no Skywalkers on the screen. So,
what do you think the on-screen time of the lightsaber will be in this one?
I don't know. I don't even know if it's going to be in there, man.
I mean, unless they come up with a reason for Vader to draw one, there's really not going to be anyone on screen that's going to have one, unless, again, Kanan shows up. But with Ezra. But I just highly doubt it. I would love it, but I just highly, highly doubt it.
I don't think Ezra is going to show up in this one.
No.
Because I don't think the guy who plays Ezra is younger, but he doesn't look so young that he could play Ezra right now. Yeah,
they've aged Ezra up a little bit in the show, but I don't think it's there yet. I don't believe that he's in his 20s, and you'd be hard pressed to make me believe that the guy who plays him right now is still a teenager. So,
well, okay. Well, to be fair, Ezra would be in his 20s at the time of Rogue One. Now that I think about it.
If we fast forwarded, yeah.
Well, he's the same age as Luke.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So maybe he would be, now that we're discussing it.
Well, how old would Luke be in this movie?
19, 20.
Yeah. How old is he when we meet him in New Hope?
20.
He's 20?
Yeah, because I don't know how far before they get the plans. I don't know how many hands it switches or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the impression I get is that, like, the movie will end with them handing them to Leia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, like, because Ezra's as old as Luke and Leia. Because he was born around the same time. He was born on Empire Day 15 years previously, and the first season of Rebels takes place 5 years before A New Hope. And they're seeming to do season by season is a year. So... Which, Lucasfilm wants to keep that wiggle room so they can do comics and books about the untold stories that aren't going to be seen and all that kind of stuff. So, so he could. I mean, Ezra could be on the screen because I could believe the guy. Because if you've seen, no, you haven't seen it, Joe, but the movie Walt Before Mickey, also known as The Dreamer. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is. Great movie to make yourself feel good about being a filmmaker because it's fucking horrible. But the guy who plays Ezra is in that movie. He plays Friz Freeland. And he does look young. He looks young in that. I think he's in his late 20s, but he could totally play 20. It's not really a difficult... It's not much of a stretch.
Yeah. I'm looking it up right now just for my own peace of mind. Sorry, listeners. But I do kind of just want to get it, because it's been a long time since I've done this, and I did this probably over a year ago, where I was like, holy shit, these guys kind of look all like they're on-screen counterparts. This guy is, he could get away with it. I don't know what the last thing he was in terms of on screen, but nothing major. Like you said, Walt Before Mickey is the biggest thing that he's been in on screen. It looks like.
Yeah, he's mostly a voice actor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he could play 20-year-old Ezra.
Yeah. Well, let's see. It says he was born in 93. I don't want to do math right now, but
23.
Right, so he'd be 23. I mean,
okay, so wow, he's I thought he was much older than he is. So yeah,
Disney's been guilty of casting people. Yeah, so he's in the ballpark. You could age him down 3 years, no problem. He's a young fella.
I mean, you can play 20 up until you're like 26, 27, and
pretty much,
that shit.
And everyone will believe it. Just don't have any facial hair. You're good.
Yeah.
And just figure out what haircut suits you to make you look younger. Some people look younger with longer hair. Some people look younger with short hair. So you just figure it out. Some stylist will be in charge of that. No problem. It would be interesting. It would be very interesting, especially for the whole Snoke theory.
Yeah, that Snoke is Ezra.
Yeah.
Which, as of right now, to date, I'm kind of leaning towards Snoke as Ezra.
It also just makes the most sense, too. Who else is there that we'll care about? You know?
Yeah, because you can't have a big bad in a Star Wars, because that's against Star Wars. You can't have a big bad in Star Wars where we don't care about the big bad. And I get the impression we're going to...
The original Emperor was kind of this second-level evil character.
I get the impression he's there only so we sympathize with Vader.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, he does serve kind of a purpose. He lessens the evil of Vader, and he kind of lessens Vader's impact on the whole operation of everything.
Yeah.
He serves a purpose. It's just... He also isn't the big bad. Vader is still the big bad.
Yeah.
It's still who Luke is trying to defeat, even if it's internally. The hero is still trying to defeat Vader. Defeating the Emperor was trivial, and in fact, the Emperor even denounces his own relevance in the movie by telling Luke to just kill him.
Yeah.
And that it won't matter to the grand scheme of things. So...
it's more like Luke has to defeat Vader, and he has to defeat the Emperor to save his father. You know what I mean? Because there's that big thing in Star Wars that Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker are two separate characters, essentially. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And, Ezra, they've projected very Anakin-like behaviors in him.
Incredibly Anakin. Almost worse than Anakin, to be honest with you.
Like a better version of Anakin.
Yeah.
It is tough, though. Who would you rather take right now? Young Anakin, as he is canon, or young Ezra, as he is canon? They're both incredibly awful.
Yeah. They are, really. There's something about Star Wars with the gifted kids.
Yeah.
You notice that? Because Ezra's also supposed to be really gifted.
It's just annoying. They're just annoying. It's an irritating character. He was just... I guess Ezra wasn't that irritating anymore. Early on, he was kind of irritating, but then he just kind of became, kind of unnecessary, it felt like, for a very long time in the show.
Well, it's just because he's surrounded by so many more interesting characters. Chopper as a droid is more interesting than Ezra.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Especially whenever you have someone like Sabine, one of the reasons why I love Sabine is because she's part of this Mandalorian lineage that we're only just now starting to discover within canon. For a long time, everyone would see Mando gear and they're all like, "Oh, Boba Fett." And I'm like, no, that's a culture. That's a Spartan-esque culture, and there's history behind that. And every episode that we find out more about Sabine's background, I'm more and more interested. Especially whenever you find out that she's related to I can't remember his name right now, but the leader of the Death Watch in Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. That she's part of that tribe. And we also find out that that Mandalorians have houses, like Game of Thrones, and there's a deep-seated culture with that, and I find that incredibly fascinating. And then you have Ezra over here who's whining about the fact that Kanan is, trying to protect him, essentially.
Yeah. The character is two-dimensional, and his relationships with the other characters on screen is also very shallow. So you get the impression, because we're introduced to him and we watch him become introduced to the rest of the group, that that relationship with all those characters has to be formed before our eyes and organically. There's no hidden history going on there, There's no way to allude to the fact that, when, Hera and Kanan are fighting over something, you get the impression that this has been going on a long time.
Yeah.
Whatever, what have you. None of that is there for him. And it really is... is the biggest challenge, I think, and it's one of the things that I always tell people, which makes films so spectacular as a form of storytelling, is that our main character, generally, that's how you were always introduced to our main characters. And in TV, that's the case as well, but they have so much more time to sort of flesh it out. Whereas opposed to movies, you really have a small period of time to build these relationships, their history, and then go back on them right before your eyes. I think that's why movies are longer nowadays, too, because there's more of a desire to want to do that. And there's just not enough time to do it and do it with a lot of detail and to tell the story. So with Ezra, specifically in this story, in Rebels, all his relationship with the characters have played out before your eyes. There's been no relationship with any other character on screen that sort of happened in the past, that you really weren't aware of, that was, deeply rooted in history and information. There's not much there. Agreed. Because as watching it, you kind of want to come into it as a clean slate anyhow. So he kind of is your vessel into the world, as a lot of main characters are. But it's brutal sometimes with this character. So it will be cool, actually. And I do feel like we're going to get at least one or maybe even two of these characters on screen at some point in live action. Even if it's just, like you said, Hera in this movie not saying much, or maybe she's just saying, maybe she's doing a briefing a la Mon Mothma, but I don't know. But it would be cool if we got like a movie about like Boba Fett and Sabine has a part in it, or something like that, in one of these anthology films.
Agreed.
We're going to have one every other year.
They're gonna have to dip into that sooner or later. Because I'm also interested to know why they haven't announced any more anthologies beyond the Han Solo movie.
Yeah, I think it's just their in my opinion, I think it's just a business move.
Oh yeah.
Don't promise the fans anything, we're definitely, all they knew is they were definitely going to do Rogue One, and they were definitely going to do a Han Solo movie because they saw the money potential in those types of movies.
Though it was confirmed that the third movie that Josh Trank was supposed to direct, but either he backed out of or Lucasfilm was like, no, was going to be a Boba Fett movie. Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know that I'd really care that much about a Boba Fett movie.
I don't.
just because of the canon that we already know about him.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that a lot of people forget. Like, you kind of already have seen Boba Fett as a child. You kind of know how uninteresting his history is to this point and why he kind of became a bounty hunter. Like, you can kind of see the misguided, cloned Mandalorian soul wandering the universe. Like, you can kind of already see it. You know what I mean? And to be honest, dude, I don't really want to be watching a movie and feel bad for Boba Fett ever.
And again, he's probably the least interesting Mandalorian we have ever come across.
Yeah, I think you could do so much more, just with that, that race and that sort of culture would have been so much more information, but you can't introduce it to the casual fan without using Boba Fett. So,
yeah. And
he's not really a part of it.
No, I mean, it's confirmed in Clone Wars after Jango's killed, he fucking goes off on revenge, and he never goes back to Mandalore. He has no real connection to Mandalore beyond his father's armor.
That's it, yeah. So it's just like, why would we watch this character who's not... I don't know, that you could probably work out some sort of interesting thing there where he does try to go back and they, cast him aside so that he sort of is, an enemy to them, or, is like not a true Mandalorian, and then he kind of has to deal with not being accepted by anything. There's a story there is like not feeling accepted in society sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the dude ends up being a fucking bounty hunter, so it's really hard for you to convince me that this guy is going to be the hero of our story.
And also on top of that, you get the impression from Mandalorian culture, the little bit, the snippets that we get, bounty hunters are not seen as good.
Yeah.
It's like a low thing that you can do as a Mandalorian. Like, a Mandalorian's supposed to protect Mandalore, and he's supposed to be true to his house and his family, not, become a bounty hunter.
We know the very uninteresting way in which this character was brought into the world and how he was raised, okay? And we know the very uninteresting way in which this character has died, okay?
Oh no, he's not dead, Joe.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. He or is perceived as dead, but I guess if you want to go the route of showing how he like Shredder climbs out of the the Sarlacc pit like to start the movie and to show that aspect of it, maybe then that's a movie that people maybe want to see. But even then, what is interesting to me about Boba Fett is that he is mysterious and he's a fucking bad dude. He's just not a good dude. And I don't want to fucking see a movie where we're going to be sitting here going, go Boba Fett, I'm rooting for you. Like, this is a bounty hunter. This is who he is. And I don't want to see him any other way. And I don't want to be him to be the hero on screen, ever. It just feels weird. He's just not a good dude.
I mean, also, even in the new canon, the Star Wars, I haven't read it, but I heard in the Star Wars comic book, there's an issue where he tracks Luke, Han, and Leia down, and him and Luke have a fucking showdown. So, like, you also have that on top of everything, so...
And if you want to do, like, Boba Fett as your, like, villain or something again, cool. You can work that into it somehow,
Yeah.
But I don't want to see a Boba Fett movie. A whole movie of Boba Fett? No. I don't... Why? I don't want to see...
Because his armor's cool, Joe.
It just, Nick, as you know and I know, you can pretty much cherry pick a story out of anything.
Yeah.
Especially anything that really doesn't have any truth to it. And in fact, even if it does have truth to it, you get to make whatever truth you want anyhow. We've seen that in biopics constantly. But you can cherry pick whatever story you want and make it be about what you want. But something like Boba Fett, it's like, really, what is the point here other than using a character that everyone already knows? Outside of that, really, what is the point of it? Yeah. And I think that's the scary thing to me about the anthology movies is when we start to cherry pick the stories out of the Star Wars universe, how tight and how close are they going to be to the stories that we already know? And how much are they going to affect the universe, the Star Wars universe? Are those stories even going to affect the Star Wars universe? That's the other thing about a Han Solo movie. It's not going to be this thing where he saves the universe. And not that it needs to be. That's not really the point. I think it's just, is this story that we're going to see going to have any impact whatsoever? Or is it just going to be this non sequitur movie with a character that we recognize?
Yeah, I don't honestly know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm keeping my mind as open as possible for the Han Solo movie because I don't want to be that guy. So.
Yeah, no, I am too. It's just, I'm saying in general with the anthology movies, like, are they all going to be, Rogue One is going to be very tightly wound into, A New Hope and the sagas in general. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tightly wound into that, and it's going to pull things closer together. It's going to pull our idea of the Star Wars universe tighter, and it's going to make us like it more. It's going to give us more information and get us more excited about Star Wars. Or are they just going to be these stories that you're like, that was fine, it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Also, another point with the Boba Fett movie. We have to remember there's an entire generation of Star Wars fans who don't perceive Boba Fett the same way as the first generation of Star Wars fans. Yeah.
They see Boba Fett as a little kid. They know Jango Fett actually a little better.
Yeah, or they see it's all together, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
It's not an afterthought. It's all one big thing that, like, this is how... Like, Boba Fett's not mysterious to an entire generation of Star Wars fans. So I'm also wondering if that's the reason why maybe they had a meeting and they were like, they were having a similar discussion as what we're having right now, and we're like, I don't know, guys. I don't know what we're going to do with Boba Fett, because, like... There's an entire generation of people that don't see him the same way as the first generation sees him. Like, how are we going to And I wonder if they had a story meeting about it and they couldn't fucking figure it out. You know what I mean?
You have a massive divide there, okay? I mean, and you look at the anthology movies as of right now, and you look at Star Wars as 3 generations right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can look at it as 4 if you want to split up our generation with the first one, right?
It's like Generation 1A and Generation 1B.
Yeah. So, and, and then there's the new generation that is still being created now, which you almost can't even include them because they kind of don't even have an opinion. They don't even know what they just watched in Force
Star Wars
Awakens.
is awesome.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like they just love it, and it's on their lunchbox and their backpack, and they love it. And they don't really have an identity yet with Star Wars as a fan. They haven't actually formed fans yet. They're just a bunch of raging children that like a thing, right? Yeah. As we once all were. So they have this sort of generational gap, and Boba Fett splits them. Yeah, and they see it differently. And it's not just that they see it differently, it's that both are going to have an expectation of Boba Fett that would be completely different. And like I said, I think you and I would like to see Boba Fett crawling out of the Sarlacc pit, scene 1.
Yeah.
How did he get out of there? That's scene 1, and that's sort of the Boba Fett we want to see. Whereas the second generation of Star Wars fans are going to want to see what happened to him after his father was murdered and how he became Boba Fett. Which, to me, I don't really care. I can already see that playing out, and I don't like it.
I mean, like I said, we got snippets of it in Clone Wars. There's 5 or 6 episodes with him in it.
Yeah.
So,
and, again, the very thing we're talking about is you run into the same problem. You have a main character in all of this that really isn't... It doesn't exactly have the stuff that you want in a main character.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because I mean, I know people will probably make the argument with Deadpool, because Boba Fett. The only way you can play Boba Fett is an anti-hero, but at Deadpool's core, he's a good person. You know what I mean? He does the right thing for poorly. You know what I mean? He does the right thing in very questionable ways, but at the end of the day, Deadpool's a good guy. You know what I mean? You don't really have that with Boba Fett. We don't really ever see that. There's not one instance where Boba Fett's really redeemable in any of the canon.
Yeah. And it's not even that he's just misguided. He's just not guided at all. And he's only guided by his own... his own purpose. What's that?
Greed and revenge. Those are his only motivations. And
we know he doesn't learn that by the time we get to, Empire Strikes Back.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, he didn't learn that then, so there's no change in the character. When he climbs out of the Sarlacc pit, maybe, but what then? I mean, he's probably making a beeline for killing Han Solo at that point.
Or Luke.
One of the two, which we know he doesn't succeed in doing.
Yeah.
Unless we have this, old Boba Fett that shows up in, Episode 8. Which I don't want to see.
No.
I'm assuming Boba Fett's dead at this point,
so old that he's irrelevant.
Yeah, just, in hiding in some sort of witness protection plan or something. He made a deal with somebody to not, be exposed.
I know in the EU canon he goes back to Mandalore and becomes an elder. Which, again, what we know about Mandalore in the greater canon at this point can't happen because Mandalorians don't like bounty hunters.
Yeah, I just don't, I don't know, I just don't see a movie there, a movie, that I want to see, that you can turn around, and it's and again, let's say you make the one that you and I want to see, right? Boba Fett climbing out of the pit and stuff, and he's this anti-hero type character. He's still got to change at the end. Yeah. He's still got to do something that, normally would, be considered not Boba Fett-like, Yeah. So,
at the end of the day, that's the difference between supporting characters and protagonists. Protagonists
Pretty
change,
much.
Supporting characters don't.
They don't, and it's just, like I said, it'd be great if, Boba Fett's, part of, the group of antagonists or whatever in one of these anthology movies, somehow.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. That's cool. Where he is.
Yeah.
That's where he belongs. It doesn't... There's nowhere else where he really belongs.
I could even see him he's a mercenary essentially. You know, he's gonna go where the money is. So
Yeah.
if our protagonist is paying him, I could see him doing a good deed, but not really a good deed. He's getting paid for it, so it's not really.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a charity work. It's, you know, him doing something, and I could see that existing. But he's not the main character of your movie, ever.
No.
So,
I mean, honestly, if he's not going to be in Rogue One, where else is he going to be? Because I could see them ham-fisting him in Rogue One that the Rebels hire him.
yeah.
I could see that. Because he has no love for the Empire, but at the same time, he doesn't give a shit because he needs to be paid.
Now, as Easter eggs go, Nick, I expected we'd see the Millennium Falcon in Rogue One as well, in an Easter egg somewhere.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I'm sure.
Especially with the Han Solo movie, you know, probably taking place, you know, not the same time, probably just a few years prior, but I'm sure by this point, you know, we know that Han Solo has the Millennium Falcon, obviously.
I feel like the Han Solo movie is going to take place within, like, a 5-year span of the first season of Rebels. Somewhere in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the other things is what's exciting about Rogue One is we're not really going to know how much time this is going to take up. I assume it takes place over the course of a year-ish, you know?
Yeah.
9 months to a year, you know? Something like that. I'm sure there's a decent amount of time passes. Or is it going to take place over the course of a week? You know, I have no idea. It could happen in a week, or this movie could actually be taking place over the course of years, and to some extent, if you consider, like, if the first act they tried to use a little bit of exposition to explain stuff, it could still, although the narrative doesn't take place over a long period of time, its spread could still cover some information in terms of, you know, actual history. So that is one of the interesting things about the anthology movies is we don't know, are they all just going to be these like little tiny stories that happen in, you know, the time that they happen, like a small portion of time, or are they going to take, you know, the Han Solo movie could be 3 years, you know, worth of time. Like we have no idea.
Yeah. Valid point is valid. The other news, Star Wars news, Daisy Ridley, which I assume she was doing a press junket in support of Rogue One. She made the comment that she thought that Rey's patronage was very obvious in Episode 7. She said that she made the comment that it wasn't until she started talking with her friends that she realized that it was not as obvious as other people. Go ahead, Joe. You were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, and that is, it was a poor choice of words on her part. And I this makes me kind of wonder, and I know that they're not allowed to say certain things, but it kind of makes me wonder just how big the list is of things they're not allowed to say. Because you know that there's a huge level of be discreet, you know, and as disclosure goes, this is what you can tell fans and you can't, and this is the kind of information we're hiding. And you know, they've already pretty much they're well into Episode 8 at this point. You know, she knows the information that's coming, and she knows the information that's been given. The word obvious makes her choice of that word to describe how she thought the movie delivered who her father was, at least in this movie, it kind of gives it away. Yeah. Because by saying that, first of all, obvious would mean that it was said out loud at some point. There's nothing obvious about this.
To be fair,
obvious is a strong word to have used.
I'm not directly quoting her, so she may not have said obvious, but continue.
No. She said she thought the article said she thought it was pretty obvious.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was that to me. The word obvious is what makes this news. Because without it, if she's just like, you know, be like, well, you know, I mean, you know, I thought that there was some information in there that you know, whatever, like anything, like, because there was information in there that we all knew gave us an idea of who her parents were because we saw her as a little girl and things like that, like, you know what I mean, like, but her saying obvious kind of kind of says it without saying it, that it's Luke Skywalker.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of... and I think that's also the difference between... I don't want this to sound pretentious, but I cannot figure out a better way to describe this. It's the difference between knowing how to read film language and not knowing how to read film language. It's one of those things that, like, from default, Joe and I are better at reading film language just because that's how we were trained in film school. One of the things that we've talked about on this podcast several times that was beaten into our heads is show not tell, show not tell, show not tell, show not tell. And there's a lot of showing in this movie through... Yes, there's a lot of subtle things, but there's so many subtle things that it does... I can understand why she says obvious. The source that I got this from was Nerdist News, and they made a point that I didn't notice until they did, which is in Rey's vision when she's in that corridor. It's the same corridor that's in Cloud City. Whenever Luke and Vader duel for the first time, and I was like, oh fuck, there you go. And I mean, Jules and I were also discussing it because I was watching the video that Luke is the only person other than Han and Leia. That Rey, it could be Rey's, because it works out. Like, the timing works out. We get the general gist that there's a 10-year difference between Rey and Kylo. So, the reason why I always got the impression is why, we're living in a world where it's confirmed that Luke is Rey's father. I always got the impression the reason why Luke abandoned Rey on Jakku is to protect her from Kylo Ren and Snoke. And we know that Snoke and Kylo Ren's been under the First Order's tutelage for a while now. That would roughly put him about 15 years old. Which, that all kind of works out timeline-wise, because Rey was about 4 or 5 whenever we see that flashback on Jakku.
I got the impression that, Luke, upon having Rey, gave her to somebody else to raise, a la Uncle Owen, you know, and they made the choice to sort of abandon her, or were forced to, or something happened there. I don't get the impression specifically that Luke is the one who left her on Jakku.
That's fair.
As her guardian. I don't think Luke was her guardian growing up, and a lot of that probably had to do with him protecting her or what have you, for the same purposes. You talk about film language, and one of the things that upon watching The Force Awakens a second time that I noticed about that scene is there's really no reason for Rey to search for Luke on her own. There's a lot of characters at the end of that movie that would probably want to go with her. In fact, nothing about the way the Resistance operates says go alone. You know, it would have been as many as we can to go find Luke Skywalker and to make sure everyone's fine. And then she brings Chewbacca and R2, and even though she brings them, what happens? She's the only one who ascends the cliffs and goes up there, and they isolate them together. It's not just because there's this idea in their heads. They're like, we just want these like, no, that is symbolic to what this all is. This is all symbolic here, and there's a specific reason that Rey is up there by herself with Luke. And that message to her at the time, you know, or up until this point, has always been obvious. Or you know, up until she talked to her friends and things about this movie, it was always very obvious that that's what that was all about.
I mean, even Mark Hamill's decision to react to Rey the way he did, like, that's not how you react to some random chick who found you. Like, that's how you react to, oh, fuck, that's my daughter, and she got dragged into this like I didn't want her to be dragged into. Like, that's, like, because I've watched that movie a lot. I saw it in theaters 4 times, and every single time I watched it, I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, having it on Blu-ray at this point, watching that scene, Rey's Force vision, there's so many hints that Luke is her father that, like, I don't understand how.
And he's waiting up there for her. He knows she's coming, and it's just sort of that. He doesn't believe it until he turns around.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And that's why he's just standing up on top of a cliff, because he knows that's where she's gonna go, and he's gonna be waiting. She
senses him.
Yeah,
he senses her. I mean, all Jedis can sense the Force, and you mean to tell me that a Jedi at the caliber of Luke, the impression that we get of Luke, the caliber that he is at this point, is not going to sense his daughter? Come on.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and you almost actually even wonder too, Nick, is this also intentional? Her kind of downplaying the mystery of who if Luke is her father or not. Because I think, when you think about it, as in terms of a surprise element to the next movie, if they hold their cards and they don't give the fans anything, and they're like, nope, we're not showing them anything, and then you find out it's Luke in the movie, are you really going to be that surprised? You're going to put it together in your head the way we are all putting it together now and go, well, obviously, yeah, duh. Like, that's what everyone's going to do. No one is going to be shocked by that information.
Yeah.
There's nothing shocking about that information. Like we've said, all that information is actually already there. You just need people to get a little bit of confirmation from them to actually piece it together and go, oh, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's pretty obvious to me as well. You know, it's like,
yeah.
And then what? Like when you're seeing it play out on screen, you're not impressed by it. You know, it's not an impressive secret. So you almost wonder if it's intentional, kind of dropping this information a little bit and be like, hey, let's just kind of nerf the whole Luke is her father mystery. Like, let's not come out and say it, but let's do it in a way that's kind of like, well, you guys didn't see it. Like, come on. You guys are smarter than this, you know?
Yeah.
You didn't see this? And then everyone's like, well, yeah, we see it. And then we see the movie, and it's like, well, we know. And then it's kind of this thing, it's like, well, I know that it's Luke is her dad. Like, there's this sort of, you know already, so it's not a big deal. You're not going to make that into the big deal. And I think that's what they want to start to get away from a little bit in these movies, is they don't want there to be this constant big twist. What's it going to be? M. Night Shyamalan sort of thing in their movies. Like, they don't want that to be the focal point of their movie. There's so much more to Star Wars than all of the fan theories, as there should be. You know, we can all write these from our couch and our brains, you know? But there's so much more that goes into them in terms of, you know, the environment and the heart that's put into the movie. And if you're just focusing on how you're going to fool the audience this time, it's really not an effective way of making good characters and a good story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think maybe they're trying to sort of nerf it a little bit, like, and not make, and sort of temper the expectations of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we're not going into it like just wondering this one thing, and then whenever we find it out, we're disappointed. But meanwhile, the rest of the movie was fucking great, you know, and people missed it.
Yeah.
Because the twist wasn't as grand as they expected.
I mean, it shouldn't be a twist. I mean, I think they're smart enough to know.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised, because, like, at this point, I feel like Daisy Ridley is pretty on board on what Lucasfilm wants out there. And if she knew that she wasn't allowed to talk about this, she wouldn't have talked about this. And also, on top of that, you mean to tell... Do you think for 1 second there wasn't a publicist sitting off to the side? A Lucasfilm publicist being there going... Because a lot of people don't realize this. Whenever there's, like, interviews... There's usually a publicist off to the side going, no, we're not going to talk about that right now. We're not going to talk about that right now. So...
I mean, the publicist could literally be standing there and go, that's off the record, right after she said it.
Yeah.
That's okay, we can't use that. Like, which is killer, I'm sure, if you're reporting this sort of stuff. But they let her say it, yeah. And I think that's the point, is like, there's a list of do's and don'ts that they have for these guys when they go into these things, what to say, what not to say, how to handle these questions that people want to get answers from. And
they got training. Both her and fucking what's his face,
Adam Driver?
Boyega. No,
Oh, yeah.
And Boyega. They all got training.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't know that, like, no. Boyega and Ridley got, like, they were announced, and then, like, the next week and a half, they were trained on how to talk to the press.
Yeah, just straw man argument, the whole thing.
Yeah. So,
I mean, it's difficult. I'm sure it's difficult, and I'm sure what they don't want is some young actor putting their foot in their mouth and ruining the whole thing because they feel the pressure of, some, stupid blog,
Yeah, say what you will, but Lucasfilm takes care of their fucking people. They fucking take care of their people.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to if you're dealing with something like this, and you want to keep everything, quiet. You want to keep everything with as little information as possible. You want to keep things mysterious, and how long has script leaking been going on? I mean, it's been going on forever. I mean, how do you do that? You keep everybody invested in the project, and you keep them respecting the project, and you let them know that part of the culture of this project is that the information doesn't get out.
Yeah. So there you go. Insert movie reference here. Official statement. Luke is Rey's father.
Yeah.
Unconfirmed, but Joe and we stand by that. Until it is explicitly said, I mean, there's that meme that sums it up so well. How do you know who, what's the hints that Luke is Rey's father? All of episode 7. I mean, even in the way that Harrison Ford interacts with, like, his acting choices in interacting with Rey, he knows this girl. Mm-hmm. He knows this girl. Why do you think he decided to offer her a job on the Millennium Falcon? He's trying to protect his fucking niece. That's why.
And you keep that bloodline, that pure bloodline of what this entire saga has been about.
Yeah.
Which is the Skywalkers. And you keep it pure, kind of, Yeah, you keep that bloodline even, more tied together. And who would I mean, yeah, why would you even want to go in a different direction?
I mean, it makes so much sense to me because I love that I love the fact that Rey would be a Skywalker and Luke specifically because if you look at it as a whole saga, you have Anakin who essentially starts the Skywalker bloodline. Then he goes evil, his son goes good. He has a daughter, his daughter's son goes evil, his son's daughter goes good. Like there's that symmetry that I think is so beautiful. And I know a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I think the big mystery now is who is Rey's mother.
Yeah, and you still have that interesting mystery. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That could play out in the movies, or play out in books, or play out in the comics.
But it would be cool if Mara Jade.
Yeah, if it was Mara Jade, and I would be, and I would be down for that because then they could do it. I'd be okay with them doing a Mara Jade novel. Yeah, where Luke and her meet, and then they conceive Rey, and like that would also add to it. If Mara Jade's dead, that's all the more reason for Luke to try to distance Rey away from this because he lost his wife to this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still a lot to play with there in terms of, because 30 years.
Yeah. 30 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you go with Rey being 20 at the time, then you have 10 years right there where Luke was single. He was a single man, So you could have the Luke fucking hose storyline.
Yeah. Luke online dating and all that stuff, Yeah. We can finally see that underbelly of the universe.
Space Tinder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Joe, I think it's time for the vault.
The vault! Oh. I have a movie.
Go, Joe, go.
Since you went first last week. I don't think I've done this movie before. I do want to do this because it's a Robin Williams movie and it doesn't get a lot of love, and I actually quite enjoy it. Not as good as his other dark comedy that he's well known for that I enjoy so very much, but I am going to be doing 1992's Toys. This movie is, how do I put it? It's dark, but it's not like, it's not Death to Smoochie dark, but it's still, but it's one of those movies that is visually very stunning. It's got that 90s bright colors and very oversaturated, and everything's all great, but the undertone of this movie is actually pretty dark. It's pretty much about a military general who starts making toys, but they're like
drone warfare.
It predicts drone warfare, as Eugene says.
Thanks, Trainer.
I mean, it does. It's pretty interesting. They're war toys essentially, and basically using toys as a form of weapon. But at the same time, Robin Williams. This was one of the other movie that Barry Levinson directed with Robin Williams was Good Morning Vietnam, which is probably highly regarded as his greatest ad-lib movie, because there are literally scenes in that movie where he is just on the radio, just going, and I would rank Toys not that far behind it in terms of his ability to improvise on the big screen. He was given a ton of freedom in this movie, and it's his ad-libbing and his sort of ability to just go off on his tangents and everything in these movies is pretty great, and Toys is a great one for it. It really is. It's overlooked for some reason in the Robin Williams performance department, but you can tell he's just given the freedom to do what he wants, and but the movie's still shot very well, and it's still shot very tightly in a way where you don't feel like you're watching sort of like the way Judd Apatow lets his actors run wild, you know? You don't feel like they set up the camera and let him go. Like, they were very much prepared for if he does have that camera rolling. And that's kind of how Barry Levinson did it, is have another camera rolling just in case. Because you don't know what he's going to do. And it's sort of just, you can't really cage Robin Williams. You can only just sort of watch him in his habitat.
Direct his flow.
Yeah, you kind of just let him, and you just don't want to miss it. That's all it is. You just want to get it on camera. So it's more like, more like nature observing in terms of shooting this sort of stuff. But he's very good in this. I would highly suggest people watch it. And it gets a really bad rap from people, and the movie's not great, but it's still very entertaining, and he's extremely great in it. So 1992's Toys.
All right, I'm going to do an animated movie that is part of the Disney Renaissance that I feel like is underrated, and I don't think it deserves to be underrated, which is, I think it's 1997? Oh, I thought I knew this, but I was wrong. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I think is a fantastic little movie. It's one of those movies that I feel like a lot of people would look at it and think, oh, this is the end of the Disney Renaissance, and no, 1996. So I was off by a year. It's the end of the Disney Renaissance. Disney's starting to lose its mojo, as how critics speak. But this movie is a great adaptation of the Victor Hugo book, because the Victor Hugo book was just specifically written because Victor Hugo loved Gothic architecture, and they were starting to tear down Gothic buildings. So he wrote this book in an effort to try to save Gothic buildings. That's all it was written by. And also at the end of the movie, Quasimodo dies. It's the same kind of thing as Aladdin, where people bitch about Aladdin not being accurate to the original story. The original Aladdin is fucking racist as shit. So yeah, props to Disney for adapting this movie a little into something that people can enjoy. Because also Victor Hugo's not really known for being a succinct writer. Go ahead and try to read the original Les Miserables. So, but one of the things that I really want to talk about this movie and how this movie influenced me specifically is the music. The music is very underrated in this movie. A lot of people kind of just go with topsy-turvy, and then that's the end of it. But movie and the music in this movie is fucking epic as shit. The opening track just starts with these amazing gothic bells and just brings you in, and there's this swooping tracking shot onto the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and it's fantastic. The song Hellfire influenced me. I didn't realize it until I re-listened to it, but that was the first instance where I was exposed to the concept of epic and the concept of having that feeling in your chest that the epic movies kind of tap into. Even though the song is essentially about a non-consensual sex, but in a Disney movie, and it also is a Disney movie that has the word hell in it. And also the use of religion in this movie is fantastic, and how people abuse religion, and how there's this two-sidedness to religion that we're very, in our culture today, we're only exposed to the dark side, not so much the hopefulness and the comfort that religion can bring to people. And this movie does a great job of illustrating both sides of it in Tony Jay's character Frollo, and illustrated in Tony Jay's character Frollo and Quasimodo, where they're kind of two sides of the coin on how the darkness and the light, how there is the darkness and the light in all of us. But it's a really fantastic movie. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is. If it is, totally go back and revisit this, because if you're around our age, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you watch this movie as a kid, and you're just like, it's stupid, because I feel like a lot of people our generation felt that way, revisit it. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised on how good this movie is, and how underrated it is, especially in the Disney Renaissance. Like I said, I think it's one of the lower rated ones of the Disney Renaissance, and I don't really think it deserves to be at the bottom of the barrel like it is. So definitely check out 1996 Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, you were nodding a lot, Joe, so I wasn't sure if you were going to add anything.
No. I mean, I always very much enjoyed that movie, just from a visual aspect. It was always,
the animation in that movie is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
the shit that they pulled off in that movie is insane. Oh, excuse me. Well, Joe, I think that wraps up another thrilling adventure of the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast.
Yes, you'd be correct.
I'm glad you agree. So, if you didn't agree, we just have to keep going.
Right, yeah, it would be brutal. We would just keep on going, and this podcast would go on for like 24 hours, and we'd still just be talking about Star Wars. Exactly.
So, I guess that means I'm Nick Kazina.
And I guess that means I'm Joe Conniff.
See you next week. And scene.
You have been listening to the Sinister DreamCast Network. For more from Sinister Dream Productions, check out www.sinisterdream.com.